First, we are going to do our moves offline on our device. And once we figure out how everything works, we are going to also link the multiplayer and online update for each move. So for that reason, I'm going to create a game object in our game view model that we can use in order to try our moves. So we say let game is equals to game object, and we're going to initialize. And ID, I'm going to use UUID here, and let's get the string. Player 1 ID, let's just say player 1, and player 2 ID will be player 2. This will also be hard-coded for now. Blocked move for player ID. Let's start it with blocking player 2. It doesn't really matter here because we don't have the second player anyway. Winning player ID, I will put just an empty string here. Rematch, this is gonna be empty array. And finally the moves, here we want to create an array of 9 objects with nil inside, so our array will be complete, it just nils inside. And to do that, we can say array, and I'm going to say repeat and the count. What we want to repeat, we want to insert 9 nil objects, and we'll just say 9 here. So this will initialize an array of nil objects, and it will insert automatically 9 objects inside. So we have a game object here. Now we can use this game object inside our game view, and using this game object we can dynamically set our system image name and not hard code this. So we want to access our view model here because our game is saved in our view model. Then we will access the game, and we want to get the moves of the game, and the moves is array. So which index we want here? Remember, we have access to this I here, so that we can say that we want to check index under I, and then we want to get this is an optional. Remember, each move is optional, and if there is no move, we are going to set a default value. Otherwise, we want to get the indicator. If, however, our move is nil, because by default all our moves are nil, we are going to show Apple logo, or whatever you set as your default here in order to hide everything. So if I run my application now, you are not going to see any difference because our moves are by default, the game moves by default are all nil objects. So in order to test that, we can update our onTap gesture function here, because right now we are just printing which object was tapped, and we're going to update this, and every time our user taps, we want to take the index that was tapped, and we want to create a move object for that. Okay, so this again going to be handled by our game view model, and we're going to create a function for that. So under my game object here, let's create some extra space. I'm going to create a function that is going to process every time our user clicks on a specific round. So let's say process player move, and we need to pass some information here so we know which move to which position to process. So we say for position, and our position is integer. The position will be the index that our user clicks. So we need to know which index was clicked in order to check if that index is free to be clicked, and if it's free, we are going to check who was clicking it. use a player 1 or player 2, and based on that we're going to create a move. Right now I'm going to just hard code in order to make our game work. So let's create a move object here. So I'm going to access my game, and then I'm going to grab the moves that we have, and then I'm going to grab the index of the object in that move array. So let's say, let's actually put some notes here. Check if the position is occupied. This would be our first task. So we are going to check if that square that clicked, which is actually called game square. If I open it here, game square view. So we are going to check if this is occupied or not. Let's go back and create another function underneath. So this is going to return a boolean. So if it's occupied, we are going to say false. True, it's occupied. Otherwise, we're going to say false. So for this function to work, we say is square occupied. Let's say in moves, we are going to pass our moves here, which is going to be an array of move object. This is an optional. Make sure you put a question mark there. And for index, and we just pass our index, which is integer, and this is going to return a boolean. Okay, so this function is going to take off array of moves, and the index we want to check. This is the position we are getting, and it will check if that array of moves, if that specific index is occupied or no. And to us to do that, we are going to say here return, and we are going to take our moves and we check if it contains where, and this may throw. Here we are going to just hit enter, and I'm going to go through all the objects in our moves array. So we say $0 question mark because it's an optional. Oops. And we want to access the board index. And this should be equals to our index. And actually we don't need this in code thing because this will be true or false anyway. So we go through every board index of our move. So it's gonna be from 0 to, now we're missing a where here. And actually like this. So we have contains, and then we open our brace where, and we put our condition. So what we are looking for is where we go through all our items in our move and get the board index of our move, and we check if that is equals to our index. So if we find something, because remember all of them are nil, otherwise only if our user has already clicked it. So if it's not nil and there is something there, then this will be occupied, and we will return true, that this specific index has something there, which means that it's already occupied. So we can get rid of this print, this node here, and instead we are going to check if our move is already taken. So I will say if is square occupied in, and we need to access our game dot moves, and here I will pass my position, and if this returns true, we want to exit because we don't want to continue the process of processing our player move, because the user cannot take that position anyway because it's already occupied. So we just say return once our position is already taken. If it's not, so it means it's empty, and we can use that for our user. So let's access our game, get the moves for the position, because we need to update a specific move here, and in our case it's going to be nil. We want to replace it with a move object. So we say that the position in that moves is equal to move. We are going to initialize 1, and here we need to pass if it's a player 1 and the board index. I'm going to by default say that yes, this is a player 1, so I'm going to say true because this is just to test our board. And the board index is going to be dynamic, of course, and it's going to be the position. So once we click and the square wasn't occupied, we are going to create a new move and assign it into our moves under specific position. And once our game is updated, we want to be notified. So this let game, we are going to change it to var, and we want to say that this will be published, so that every time this variable changes, our game view model will like broadcast that, guys, one of my variables was changed. So if you have it and you want to update your user interface, update it. And another thing we need to do here, I will put a note that block the move for our specific user. And then we already talked about this, check for win and check for draw. And if none of these, we just continue our game. So let's go to our game here. And instead of printing this, I will ask my view model to process player move for, and we just pass the index here. And let's run our application. So now if I click on any button, it's gonna put X, because right now we are just hard-coded. Let me go back here. Hard-coded that our player is going to be, where is it? Is player 1 is true. If I can say it is false, this will show only zeros or O's. We can also, just for sake of it, do a switch here. So I'm going to say var is player 1 equals to true, and we are going to do this and pass it here, is player 1, and every time we click, let's switch these. Let's try. Actually, I think this will not work, but let's quickly try is player 1 toggle. We'll see if this will work. I think it wouldn't, but there is another way to do it. Yeah, this doesn't, so we can pass it here. And then I will quickly add a state var So let's try this. So we are just changing the value after each click. So we have XO. Obviously there is no logic to check who won, who lost. But one thing we can check is I cannot override any clicks. But if we go ahead and remove this line here, that we check if the position was occupied, and we run, I click, and now if I click, I can override this to X. Right? I can do whatever I want with the cells being changed. So that's why we need to have this in place, and if it's already occupied, we are going to just exit the function. So I'm going to get rid of this is player one thing, because we just wanted to see if it's working. And here we don't need this, where is it? Position is player one. So Command P, make sure we don't have any, here I'm going to just say true for now. So it's hard coded. Command P to make sure everything is working. Yeah. So in our next lecture, we are going to continue into checking all these things here.